Welcome to the Embodiment Matters podcast with me, Erin Giesemann Rabke, and my beloved Carl Rabke. We don't have the luxury of living in ordinary times, but rather we live in extraordinary ones where the way we live in the next decade will make a huge difference in the future of life on planet Earth. We aspire in this tapestry of rich conversations drawn from a variety of wise perspectives to share resources to help you embody the wisdom, compassion, and skillful actions that are needed during these times. You can find out more about our classes and sign up for our newsletter at embodimentmatters.com. You can also become a supporting member of our podcast with a small monthly donation. Look for Embodiment Matters at patreon.com. Hello, beautiful humans and podcast listeners. This is Erin here, and I'm excited to share a beautiful conversation I had with Kaira Jewel Lingo called We Were Made for These Times. In this conversation, we explored many rich topics, including embodiment and mindfulness as not being separate practices. We talk about her new book entitled We Were Made for These Times. We explore the practice of coming home to ourselves and reasons why we sometimes may not want to do that. We talk about applying these beautiful teachings, not just in a pristine setting of a monastic situation, but in the mess of real life. We talk about the weave of social justice and mindfulness and how each of these realms need each other. We explore the mantras of true love offered by Thich Nhat Hanh, talk about powerful teachings from watching two monks from Plum Village who attended COP26. We talk about the powerful practice of kissing the earth with your feet, layered mindfulness, and so much more. Kaira Jewel Lingo began practicing mindfulness in 1997 and teaches Buddhist meditation, secular mindfulness, and compassion internationally. After living as an ordained nun for 15 years in Thich Nhat Hanh's monastic community, Kaira Jewel teaches in the Zen lineage as well as the Vipassana tradition at the intersection of racial, climate, and social justice, with a special focus on activists, Black, Indigenous people of color, artists, educators, families, and youth. Now based in New York, she offers spiritual mentoring to individuals and groups. She is the author of the just-released book, We Were Made for These Times, Skilfully Moving Through Change, Loss, and Disruption from Parallax Press. You can learn more about Kaira by visiting her website, kairajewel.com, KairaJewel.com. And you can find more links about an upcoming retreat she's offering, as well as a new community of study for Buddhist Christian community hosted along with her partner, who is an Episcopal priest. You'll find that at our show notes on the website. Thanks so much, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome, Kaira Jewel. I'm so happy to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Erin, for having me.
It's wonderful. Well, first I want to say congratulations on your beautiful new book, We Were Made for These Times. And I wonder if you want to start just talking a little bit about that phrase and just to say something about that to give folks an introduction.
Sure. So it comes from a quote by Clarissa Pinkola Estes from her letter to a young activist. And it touched me so much when I saw it because we can really feel intimidated when we meet these times that require so much of us. And her message was really so full of confidence, saying, this is exactly what was supposed to happen, is we were supposed to encounter this challenge because we have everything we need to meet this challenge. In fact, everything we've done with our life has been in preparation for this moment. So it's kind of this beautiful, it's recasting to me like our past, that it's not like, oh, this moment is so difficult and let's retreat. It's everything we've done has been to help us meet this moment. And we can.
It's wonderful. It's so wonderful to remind each other of that when we forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I guess I'd like to ask you next about embodiment. So this is the Embodiment Matters podcast, and we just love to hear reflections on what does that mean to you? How do you relate to embodiment and why it matters?
Yeah. And one of the things I talk about at the beginning of the book is coming home. That the only way we can really meet the challenges that face us, whether it's time of transition or loss or upheaval or some inner squeezed moment or some outer moment of real limitation or difficulty, is by coming home to ourselves. That's where it starts. That's where we really have the strength to call upon and know that we were made for this moment. But we have to reach down and connect with that part of ourselves that is deeply prepared. And that coming home experience is coming back to our body, to feel our body, to feel, because we actually, we can't even register that we're in a moment of crisis if we're not embodied. Because that whatever is impacting us in a difficulty is impacting us at the level of our body, as well as all the other levels of our being. And so to really move through that with clarity, with skill, we have to be in our bodies. It doesn't happen anywhere else.
Right.
Because life isn't happening anywhere else. Real life. And so often the trouble we get into comes from not being embodied to begin with.
Personally and culturally, right?
Very much so. Very much on an individual and collective level. I mean, our climate situation to me is a direct result of not being embodied.
I love that you said that. I relate to it in that way also. Yeah. I love that you spoke about coming home and the way you use that language in the book about coming home. And you also speak to avoiding home and then putting your home in order. So do you want to say a little bit about that? I know for some, it's so deep. It's so easy to say, come home to our bodies. And of course, it's a natural state in a certain way. And yet there are so many obstacles and struggles for folks. So I'd like you to say a little more about that.
Sure. Well, we live in a culture and, period of history where there's a lot that's influencing us not to be in touch with our bodies and not to be in touch with this home that exists in us, but to really be focused externally with all of our electronic devices. And, I'm just noticing how in public spaces, there's so many more screens than there used to be when I was a child. Now it's like in every subway, metro, in every waiting room. It's not just like a poster, or music playing. It's like a television with I don't find it easy to not pay attention when there's a screen very, in my face. So there's all these ways that our attention is being pulled out of our inner experience, often not for our benefit, right? It's to sell us something or, promote a message. And so this coming home, so we can spend a lot of our lives alienated from our actual experience of what it's like to occupy our body, what it's like to really feel how we are at a very basic level. Like, it takes some time to sink below the surface of our more agitated, more mind-driven experience, to sense into, well, how am I actually doing? Is there tension in my body? Am I worried about something? Is there something like, there's often things driving us beneath the surface, right? That we're not aware of. So we suddenly find ourselves, going to the snack machine or reaching for that, substance that kind of soothes us, but may not really be what we deeply need. It satisfies a temporary urge or need, but then may not really get to the deeper root of what's ailing us. And so we can live like that for a lot of our life, sort of. And what happens when we don't have a practice of regularly coming home to ourselves is, that inner home is sort of in disarray. There's a lot of things that we haven't been tending to, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually. And so while that place in us is very capable of providing soothing and rest and real refuge, we do need to put it in order for it to have that feeling. Just like our home, if it's a big mess, it's not a very relaxing place to be. But once we, put everything away and clean it up, freshen it up, it can be a very supportive place. And so there's some work sometimes that needs to be done if we've spent a lot of our lives not in our home. Then there's some work to attend to whatever is accumulated, or forgive what might be something we're holding on to in a way that's an obstacle for us to just be at peace in ourselves. But all of that's possible. It's possible to do that work of clearing out the obstacles and putting our home in order. And then when we do that, it really can be a place where we can find deep rest and deep wisdom that we really need in order to meet what's happening in our personal lives, in our collective space.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm thinking about, time is so funny during pandemic. I don't remember, but it's been in the last year and a half. And someone from Thich Nhat Hanh's organization, or some students, were sharing a post on social media and elsewhere of like 10 things to remember to just help you stay sane in this, liminal space where a lot of the outer structures are dissolving. And I shared it. I found it really helpful, waking up and doing this first, and, whatever the list was. I don't remember exactly. And a friend of mine who has 2 really young children, mine is now 11, hers are like, 3 and 5, something like that. She said with a little bit of snark, like, oh yeah, I'd like to see those monks try to do this practice with 2 little kids running around, Yeah. And I know you've had quite a journey from 15 years as a monastic to entering householder practitioner life. And I wonder how that's changed for you, or how you would, respond to my friend saying, yeah, it sounds, we can use these analogies of being present as you sip your tea, and when you have hungry, screaming children running amok around you, it's really different, I'll be quiet and let you respond to that.
Sure. I have a teeny bit of experience with this, not really, but having a puppy who we got as a 3-month-old puppy our lives totally changed when she came to us. Like, we really had a very disciplined schedule to teach her, to potty train her and to meet all of her needs, and to really adjust to, training her. And so waking up in the middle of the night and taking her out to pee. Anyway, our sitting practice shifted for a couple months, that we were really, in a nice space of regular morning meditation. And then to accommodate her, we had to really make some adaptations. And now she's 9 months, and she's, anyway, I understand the way a young being of even a different species can have a real impact on the way, even how we experience time. Like, even now we have to think in terms of 2-hour increments, that we always have to be thinking of making sure she can have access to the bathroom, because so I think what I appreciate about Thai's approach to practice is it's very what works in your situation. And so when, for instance, when I lived in Germany, I was offering a teaching for a midwife who ran a group for parents of very young babies. And so we did a meditation. All the parents were in a circle with their very, like, few month old to a year old babies. And we did an open eye meditation. We weren't asking them to close their eyes, because if their child needed something, but we just were mindful as, the parents were looking at their child, feeling their body, listening to their child. If they needed something, they would offer that to them. But, it was a very different kind of, there wasn't the same kind of stillness or silence that you'd have, say, in a context of just adults, no children. But it was a very beautiful group meditation that the children were invited to be part of. And so the practice was to pay attention to whatever was happening. And so I think your friend who made that comment, what does it mean to really be with the sound of children screaming in the background, or not to see that as something like a distraction, but as part of your object of meditation. So if you're changing their diaper, then what would it mean to be really present and notice the touch and the texture of skin and diaper, and look into your child's eyes and feel your breathing and notice their breathing, and really bring a quality of, the Zen master, which is there in each of us, of being really attentive to each moment, because there are many things that can reveal themselves when we're that present. Or if you're feeding your child, or if you're holding your child while they're crying, or rocking them to sleep, like feeling your body, feeling them in their body, like how are they feeling in their body? What can you pick up from your body, as this communication between bodies? And so, these things that the monks and nuns were offering in terms of waking up and smiling, being aware, we can do those with children. It's a lovely thing to teach our children, actually. Like when they wake up, to be aware, I'm waking up. Can I mark this moment with a little ritual? So if we're there when our children wake up, we can sing them a song. We can smile to them and say, hey, this is a new day. Let's really enter this new day, in the way we'd like to. Or make some kind of intention for how we want to go through the day. And I think children are very receptive to these kinds of things. There's a reason we have bedtime rituals and morning wake up rituals, or even if it's, brushing your child's teeth in the morning, that could be meditative, just by bringing awareness to, do you hear the sound of the water coming out of the faucet? What does it feel like to have the brush touching your gums and your teeth? How to pay attention to the taste of the toothpaste, and notice when you spit out, like notice that motion. And like that could be a really interesting meditation, alive, in the midst of life kind of meditation, not needing to sit on your cushion and close your eyes. And so I think it's really about, bringing ourselves fully to life. And, and also when there's difficulty. So when our children are upset or crying or resisting what we want them to do, that's a really important moment of mindfulness too, of like, okay, like, my dog doesn't yell or scream, but she protests plenty of things that we want her to do. Or, we ask her to sit and she just blows us off, like, whatever, I'm not going to sit. So there are moments of like little interpersonal conflict. And so there's like all these decisions, there's like choices we have of how do we meet that defiance, or, two wills that are kind of going in the other direction. And, and I really feel it's so clear with my puppy that as much as I can, if I can make her see the benefit of doing something I want her to do, rather than forcing her to do what I want her to do, it's so much better. Like I can see how even as a puppy, if I make her do something by force, she really, that's like registers. And it's a way that breaks down our connection. Of course, if it's about her physical safety, there's not a lot of leeway. We want to keep them safe. But if I can, get her in the house, she often doesn't want to come back in the house after being outside. I just let her be outside, and I show that there's a treat on the floor of the kitchen. So she'll know if she comes inside of her own free will, she'll get a treat. Things like that, versus, pulling on her to come inside. So I think, those kind of things, we do have some choice of how we interact when our children don't want to do what we want them to do. That really build more of a bond, more trust, versus, creating, distrust or separation.
Or dominating.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'd love you to talk a bit about this. I know this is a big topic for you, about mindfulness and social justice. I know that's personal and also in your family lineage. And how do I want to ask this? Part of me almost wants to ask, can either of those happen without each other? I find myself actually when friends or colleagues are teaching things in this vein, and really ignoring or decentering the times we're in a certain way, that it's very much about oftentimes privileged people feeling better. And not that everyone shouldn't feel well, of course they should, but anyway, I'm curious how you want to talk about this, because it's so big and so important.
Could you just clarify? I didn't quite understand. What is it about privileged people feeling better? The positioning of social justice, or?
No, when practice does not include looking at the climate crisis,
got it.
When it's almost like, I imagine it like an invitation to stick our heads in the soothing sands of self-care and ignore what's hard.
Yeah.
And I just find it so important for me personally to always contextualize these practices.
Very, very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just reading an article, I think it was in Lion's Roar, about Japanese American Buddhists, and how in World War II, there was a story of a family. So these were, first of all, in our US or Western Buddhist contexts, we don't often acknowledge or even, appreciate the ways in which folks that immigrated from Asian countries actually trained earlier generations of convert Buddhists. So that's like written out of history. Nobody talks about that. But then also to learn that Buddhist priests in Japanese Zen, Japanese Buddhist traditions were often targeted as the most dangerous people in the Japanese community, as far as mobilizing, Japanese citizens, U.S. citizens, Japanese American U.S. citizens against, this idea, this delusion that they would, provoke an uprising because they were the heart of the Buddhist community. And so there was a story about this priest who buried the most sacred objects this family had from Japan, and they were lost, because their homes were, sold, and they lost all of their property when they were put in internment camps. And that's not a part of Buddhist history that we learn in many spaces of, like, the kind of the non-white people that were key to bringing Buddhism to the U.S., North America, and what they had to endure, how invisibilized they were, and how their Buddhist practice was suspect and targeted. And so when you talk about putting our head in this comforting sand, that's one example that comes to mind of, like, it's very convenient to not face that part of our history as a nation, as a culture. And so, I've been using the word reparations recently in terms of how do we really make sure that everyone has access to these teachings. That's a form of reparations, because these teachings of embodiment, of enlightenment, of mindfulness, have often been in very exclusive and elite spaces, because white supremacy exists, because people, have comfort zones, and don't tend to go out of what's comfortable for them. And so what happens in society, the kind of separation of communities gets reproduced in Dharma communities. And so with mindfulness and social engagement, really looking at how have we benefited from, like, where does our practice of mindfulness come from, and how do we actually really pay respect to the people who made this possible for us, which is bigger than a homogeneous, community. If many people practice mindfulness in fairly homogeneous communities, and so seeing that the roots of mindfulness are much more than that community, and how to engage in that larger picture with respect, with honoring, with learning the history, and also how to, in our current times and in the future, how to really support movements to make mindfulness more responsive, more inclusive of the, who's in our society. And so there's many movements afoot. I mean, I'm calling, like, the BIPOC mindfulness movement. That's a movement to me. Like, there's real wonderful things happening, and there's LGBTQ mindfulness, and there's really understanding the gender, kind of trap we can get in, and making space for folks that are trans in mindfulness and Dharma communities. So there's like a lot of awareness to bring more attention to how we share this practice so that it doesn't alienate people that really need it. Right. So when we use gender exclusive terms, or when we only give examples of heterosexual or heteronormative people in our talks or in our references, then that's perpetuating something, that's keeping something going. Mm-hmm. Just as it is when we only reference white teachers, or only draw on or invite to our gatherings white experts.
Right.
So I think that's one way in which mindfulness and social justice really are basically two sides of the same coin. They have to be. If we're doing mindfulness, it has to be addressing social inequality. And if we're doing social justice, the way we really can stay grounded in our work is by also doing it with mindfulness. And I think that's more and more I'm seeing activists and social justice communities bringing in that piece of self, mm-hmm. The personal ecology, mm-hmm. As well as the planetary ecology. Like we're not of use to people if we burn out.
Right.
And we can be happy as activists. We can be healthy as activists. It doesn't have to be a path in which we treat ourselves poorly.
I'm glad you said that too. It's really beautiful. Your energy as you talk about this, I'm thinking of earlier this year, Carl and I had a conversation with Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, mm-hmm. who said something like, I was asking about just the messiness that can happen inevitably in mixed groups trying to address social justice. And she said, I don't have a conversation with anyone about that unless they have a meditation practice. Like, nope, we're just not even opening that door. Mm-hmm. And currently I'm participating in one of those messy situations. And I keep thinking, wow, I sure wish everyone had these tools. And it gets so tricky to not, especially as, a socialized as white person, to not be quote unquote tone policing someone with a lot of justified reactivity, mm-hmm. But also how to, I'm just touched by what you said of, you can be happy doing this. It can be beautiful. You can have wellness as you're an activist. Mm-hmm. It's complicated in so many ways. And I just appreciate what you're saying and that there are many movements afoot. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's so important that, because what these waters of race, of oppression, there's so much personal trauma that each of us carries around this.
So true.
And it's so easy to default into, patterns of blame or projection, or not really being with the pain that's there in us.
Right.
And so being able to, I think to me, one of the most important things that meditation helps me to do is sit with my pain.
Yeah.
And I don't, it doesn't always happen the way I would like it to. Mm-hmm. But when I can really just feel it, it starts to shift, and it starts to open up transformation, so that I'm not, in this us against them, or but really like, okay, what's really going to heal? What's going to bring healing to the whole situation? Which means, you know, the person that's causing harm, the person that's being harmed, you know, everyone is a victim in that situation.
Right.
That's the real wisdom of the Dharma, the eyes of interbeing, is seeing in any situation of harm, everyone is a victim. So everyone needs help. Now that whoever's causing harm needs to be stopped from causing harm, but also to, in that process, to still be seen as someone who needs support.
Yeah. It's kind of advanced practice, and we can do it. We were made for this, right?
That's right.
I'm thinking of the well, first I just want to say me too, and in sitting with pain in my meditation practice as well as somatic practice. You know, that's so important.
Yeah.
With the eyes of compassion and presence, and not fixing, but being with. And I was so touched by your bringing Thai's 6 mantras of true love that can be, my understanding was directed inner or outer, and or both. Do you want to talk about those a little bit? They're so lovely. I'd love for people to hear them.
Sure. So I've always heard him give this teaching as something to practice with another, but they definitely can also, we have a relationship with ourselves, so they can also be practiced internally. But so these are the mantras of true love. These are the things we need to be able to say to each other in any relationship where there's love. And so the first one is, he always starts each one with darling. So that's
right. I love that.
You can choose whatever word is evocative for you that helps you really connect with your beloved one. But darling, I think the first one is it I'm here for you, or I know you are there? I can't remember.
I've got them right here.
Okay. I can't remember the order. I'm here for you. Yes. So darling, I'm here for you. So that mantra is really like, how can we love if we're not really present? Just like we were saying earlier on, like the essence of mindfulness is to be with whatever you're doing. So if you're with someone, then you're really with them, and I'm here for you. You know, you bring your full presence to feel, sense, connect, notice that they're there. We make ourselves present so we can offer that presence to the other. My darling, I'm here for you. And then the next mantra, second mantra of true love, is darling, I know you're there, and I'm very happy. So we become present, and then we can really recognize that the other is present too. And we can get so much from, you know, like, we don't know how long we get to be with the loved ones in our lives. Every moment we get to be with them is a real gift. And so we find ways to let them know that. I know you're here, and I'm so happy. You know? We can do that in so many ways with our children, parents, spouses, siblings, our pets. I tell my dog all the time, I love you so much. I don't know what she understands from that, but you know, I really look into her eyes, and I really, because I'm so aware like how much joy she's brought to my life, and I want her to know that she means a lot to me. So then the third mantra, darling, I know you suffer. That is why I'm here for you. So we recognize when our loved ones have difficulty, we don't miss that. We try to really let them know, you know, even if they don't want to talk about it, we let them know we're with you. We know this is difficult. And already with them touching into that, it can make it easier for them. Just to know we know they're going through a difficult time. They can share the weight of it with us. They don't have to carry it by themselves. And the fourth mantra is, darling, I suffer and I need your help. So that's when we say, I'm struggling and I also need you to know it, because if I keep it to myself, I may, let it come out at you in unhelpful ways. So we want to own that and let them in, because sometimes they wouldn't know. And it's important that we, articulate whatever we're understanding. Sometimes we don't understand exactly what it is that's upsetting us, but talking about it, letting them know, can help us understand ourselves better, help them understand ourselves better. So that fourth mantra is not a blaming. It's not like you made me or you did this, but it's like, I suffer and I need your help. I need you to know it. And then the fifth mantra is this beautiful mantra of recognizing the good. And it's saying, oh, this is a happy moment. Whenever there's something beautiful happening, to actually really take it in. Because it's so easy to let those wonderful moments flash by, and we don't really let them in to nourish us. That moment when someone was really there when you needed them, or that really good meal, or just that, kind look on a difficult day. So it's like not taking that for granted, and it's really recognizing, oh, this is good. Life is good in this moment, because when we touch that, we make more space for that. We notice it more. The more we give attention to it, the more often that can come in and take residence in us. And then the last mantra, which is the one I sort of focused on in the book, is, darling, you're partly right. So this is in any situation where we're receiving either praise or blame. It's this response of equanimity. Like, yes, wow, praise feels really good, right? But you're partly right, because we know that we also have sides of ourselves that still need, attention and cultivating. And then also when people blame us, we can say, well, you're partly right. There are things that we need to transform in us, but there are also things that are just breathtaking about us. And so we want to keep that in mind, even as someone is pointing out our flaws. Like, yes, that's partly true. And there's other truth as well, because we need to see the whole picture in either case. So we can let in the praise, we can let in the, constructive feedback, and move forward in a strong, in a compassionate way with both. To learn from what we need to learn from, to be strengthened by the wholesome things people are pointing out in us as well.
I love that. They're so beautiful. I don't remember where I read this, but I have, taken it so deeply, of Thai saying to oneself, to say, he said, darling, my inner life, like, sweetheart, I care about your suffering. For so many people, it's so radical to make that move of almost going through each of those steps. Like, I'm here, even to the suffering. I know you're there. I know you're suffering, and I'm here for you. I care.
Beautiful.
So beautiful. And just to weave that back into my heart wish that we anyone who wants to show up toward meeting these times, including social justice and climate crisis, could have that foundation of self-kindness, because, as you said so beautifully earlier, that's what allows our wisdom to come. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that you're practicing that for yourself and in times of difficulty. So
Oh, yeah.
important.
Yeah. It's what would I do without that? We just suffer, and it's so beautiful to turn in that way. And I love also that you just spoke of taking in the good, and how that's also such an important part of meeting these times. And I know sometimes people feel guilty, or like it's not okay for me to take in the good because there's so much that's wrong or out of whack. I have often thought about and repeated this. I love this framing from Rick Hansen, who I know wrote a blurb on your book, which is great, about our brains being oriented toward the good, like a nonstick pan, like Teflon, and toward the negative, like Velcro. And how beautiful that we can actually work with that, with neuroplasticity, as you're saying, to become more permeable to what's beautiful and good, and how that's not indulgent, but actually such an essential foundation.
Yeah, so true. And I mean, as our world gets harder and harder to live in, we really need that. We are really going to need that, and be able to share it with others. There's this is in the book, a beautiful passage from the Oribe Mountain Elder that maybe I'll just read it, because
Please do.
It's about, let me just find it. Yeah. So this is the elders of the Hopi Nation in Oribe, Arizona, offer this timely wisdom. This is the quote. There is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel they are torn apart and will suffer greatly. Know that the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above water. And I say, see who is in there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and journey comes to a halt. So this sense of celebration, even in the midst of like something pretty terrifying, look around, see who's with us, and celebrate. It's like we can still take in the good even when things are hard. And that's what actually helps us to get through it.
Right. And that piece at the end of not taking ourselves so seriously, also this paradox of the seriousness of the times. And also, one of my Dharma teachers used to say, do you want to know how your practice, if your practice is working or not? And I said, oh yeah, please tell us how to know. And he said, if you think what's happening in your life is a really big deal, your practice is not working yet. And I just love that orientation to like something between reverence and not taking it too seriously. Yeah.
I went through a difficult time as a nun. There was a big uproar. And I remember Thai came to the monastery, and as he was leaving, he said to me, this is all of this whole uproar situation. It's a bubble. It's a bubble. He was like, see it as a bubble. It can just, very ephemeral. And it was such an important teaching that he was like, I know you feel like this is like such an important, it was a really difficult situation, but he was saying, don't grasp onto it and take it personally.
I love hearing that and reminding myself that that comes from someone who, was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by Martin Luther King Jr. and who that can sound like, how do I want to say it? Like it could be spiritual bypassing. And it could be, I suppose, in certain contexts, but how deep rooted, Thai is in anti-war activism. And it's, I will confess that I've been a Dharma practitioner since I was a teen, a long time ago, and have loved Thich Nhat Hanh's books, and then have been most of my years of practice have been in a Tibetan lineage. And I sometimes would read something that Thai said and think that it's cute. Like, oh, it's kind of cute, For example, kissing the earth with your feet. And then, I'm in the last decade, I am so blown away by the profundity that's not cute at all. It's like to actually kiss the earth with your feet when you walk is such a profound practice of embodiment and connection and reverence. And there's a way in which sometimes these things, I think, at least in my experience, can be, you can miss the depth for how simple it sounds. You have this gorgeous piece. I wonder if I can find it. I think it's on page 9. I don't know if you have your book right there.
I
describing walking meditation. That I was so touched. It's, yes, just a gorgeous, and before you read this, I just want to say I'm thinking back of my friend who's, my practice had to change a lot becoming a parent also. And I started to reframe for myself what I would call layered mindfulness, because when you're with children, it's not like one thing. There's so many layers to be included. And layered mindfulness is really different for me than when I notice my attention is fractured, but it can include the richness of the layers. And your layered description here is just so gorgeous. So will you read it for us?
Sure. So we can experience encountering the spaciousness and free place of our true home in unexpected moments as we spend more time tuning in to what's happening inside us and around us. One morning when I was a novice nun in slow walking after sitting meditation, I became very present and aware of each step. I began by being aware that as I was stepping with my left foot, I was at the same time stepping with my right, because my left foot could not be without my right, and vice versa. Then I saw that my arms were also contained in my feet, so I was stepping with my arms. Then my hands, my stomach, my brain, my sense organs, heart, lungs. I was 100% with my body. I was tasting the earth with my feet, listening to it, looking at it, feeling it, knowing it, smelling it with my feet. My heart was loving it, my lungs breathing it in and out. Then I turned my attention more towards the earth, and I knew I was also walking on cool streams of water flowing under me, and hot, fiery liquid deep below in the center of the earth. I imagined walking on the feet of those directly opposite us on the other side of the planet. The soles of my feet touched the soles of a little baby taking tentative steps, and a pregnant woman and an old grandpa. My feet touched the feet of a lonely, isolated person, and someone carried away by hatred and anger. I was also walking on the feet of someone who was right then doing walking meditation and enjoying the present moment. I was one with those walking the earth whose hearts were filled with love and peace.
That's just so gorgeous, isn't it? I'm a little tingly all over again. Like, what is there in one step with that
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm just feeling really touched by how embodied authentic mindfulness is, and how it's not always presented in that way in our very hedist Western culture. And I just love that. I'm so feeling that through your feet, through the earth, the
Mm-hmm.
reverence and interbeing that's right there.
Yeah. And you can only kiss the earth with your feet, back to Thai's teaching, if you're really using, if you're really in your feet,
Right.
right? That can't happen in your mind. Well, you could visualize walking in that
Right.
way. Of course, not all of us have a chance to walk. And so, however we move can also be a way of moving with reverence, moving over the earth. And we can visualize in our minds, offering that love to the earth. And that's very effective, actually, when we visualize things. But that's different than what, it's not thinking about, but it's coming into our body and really offering ourselves fully to connect with the earth, whether it's through our actual movement or through our a kind of prayer of our heart.
It's beautiful. I love the piece in the book where you share some instructions about sensing these qualities in a wheelchair and what you could feel of the gravel or the different quality of texture, which is so touching.
Yeah, that's thanks to Matthew Huston. So grateful for those instructions. That's so needed, There is a lot of ableism still in our instructions, and I'm still learning. But I really appreciate people that are supporting our community to just, offer instructions that work for many different bodies, many different kinds of experience. Like the body scan, how do we offer that when we feel into the body in ways that acknowledge many different experiences?
It's beautiful. I can't believe we've almost got an hour already. I could talk to you for a long time, I think. I am a lover of quotes, and you have so many gems opening the chapters through the book. They're lovely. I wonder, would you be willing to read the Alice Walker quote that starts the whole thing off? Because it's so juicy, and I'm such an Alice Walker fan and would love to both hear you read it and anything you want to say about it would be great.
Sure. So, I found this quote after I had finished almost all the edits of the book, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect to begin the book. It's funny how you put something at the beginning that you only found at the very end of the process. Yeah, I feel like Alice Walker is a benefactor for me, and since I was young, I've been reading her books. Some periods of our growth are so confusing that we don't even recognize that growth is happening. We may feel hostile or angry or weepy and hysterical, or we may feel depressed. It would never occur to us unless we stumbled on a book or a person who explained to us that we were in fact in the process of change, of actually becoming larger spiritually than we were before. Whenever we grow, we tend to feel it as a young seed must feel the weight and inertia of the earth as it seeks to break out of its shell on its way to becoming a plant. Often the feeling is anything but pleasant. But what is most unpleasant is the not knowing what is happening. Those long periods when something inside ourselves seems to be waiting, holding its breath, unsure about what the next step should be, eventually become the periods we wait for. For it is in those periods that we realize that we are being prepared for the next phase of our life, and that in all probability, a new level of the personality is about to be revealed. So I love that these are the periods we wait for, these times of discomfort, because they are so pregnant, they're so full. And it kind of links back to what we started out with, talking about the title, this sense of us being a seed, and this like darkness, this weight, this not knowing. But then the seed has what it needs, right? To come into this moment. And so the discomfort is real, and yet it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with what's happening. It actually, we are right where we need to be.
Is there anything else you want to leave us with, Kaira, as we close?
I would just, given what you shared about kissing the earth, I would really encourage us to, after listening to this, to move in whatever way we move, and explore really feeling ourselves connected to the earth, and let ourselves be present for the earth. Let the earth be present for us. So just an invitation to try out, really, dear earth, I'm here for you. Dear darling earth, I know you're there, and I'm very happy.
So beautiful. Thank you so much for your time and your book and your practice and your work in the world. Really grateful to connect with you.
Thank you, Erin. Me too. It's been lovely.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you enjoy this podcast, it's great if you want to share it with friends or post about it on social media. Also, you could make a donation to support the podcast or find out more information about our classes and offerings at our website, embodimentmatters.com.